right. Sorry, I mentioned yesterday, going to try to get better about the scheduling. That didn't happen today. I wasn't sure actually if I was going to stream. I'm sort of a tight window, and by the time I got some stuff done, came around, I was thinking it was basically like, oh gosh, I got to stream right now, or it ain't gonna happen. So I hit the go button. So I know that which I can appreciate. Obviously, if folks don't know the stream is happening, hard to get in here, but just got to do. Had to do what I got to do. Had to do what I had to do if I was going to get online today. Otherwise, I'd have to give the day a pass. And I dislike giving the days passes, especially if there's not a driving need. We're looking here at spells. Spells, taking the Book of Gob as inspiration. Last time, we kind of worked through Bind Lightning, which I thought was kind of cool. Whatever, tweak it here and there, but I think this was a good spell, much better than what we tried to do originally, which was a kind of a weather spell, because it's got a very simple, straightforward, kind of limited effect. I think one of the things is, I think if you're going to use this Book of Gob style, which is essentially very narrative fiction, not a lot fictionative, I don't know, and really no mechanics attached to it, or very, very little, is that I think the more you can really define an effect in some kind of concrete way, the better. So I think what that means for me, at least, is that when you look at something like, hey, control the weather, or even a more tame version of that, which might be, say, I don't know, shift weather, what do you want to call it? Still has a lot. There's just a lot to try to describe. And I think you can get caught up trying to figure out what it means. Well, okay, what does it mean? Shift weather. Do we need to write up a little table of, if it's sunny, then it goes to partly cloudy, then it goes to cloudy, then it goes to stormy, what back and forth? Do we need to come up with all that? Do we need to figure that stuff out? How far can you move the needle? And not to say that you can't do that in a Book of Gob style, but I think as I'm becoming acclimated to the system, it might not be the thing that I go, oh yeah, that's a great fit for me as a first time, because I will want to go down all those rabbit holes. Well, what does it mean? Cloudy to sunny, sunny to cloudy. It's not. I think it's something that maybe is a little too interpretive. I just said makes the, what do you say? Makes the weather slightly better or worse. That doesn't really sound right. Makes the weather more precipitation or less precipitation. Well, that kind of, there's a lot of things to muck about with, and maybe I'll get to a place where it'll make more sense how to do that if we were going to do that spell. But kind of riffing on that, we got to Bind Lightning, which I think we're able to get to a much more defined. What does it do? It binds lightning to a rod, and then you can release the lightning from the rod. Really straightforward. Everyone can understand what that effect means. There's not a lot of having to explain, like with the weather thing. There's a lot of I got to try to explain. I got to try to qualify, or at least I want to. I haven't gotten to that point where I've refined. Like I said, maybe later on I'll have a refined language to call upon. But at the moment, I'm getting caught in, well, how far is enough? How far can you move it? This one, no, this is lightning comes to the rod, then lightning gets out of the rod. Easy peasy. Has a very kind of concrete sort of single effect. I know not all the spells have one single effect, but basically just guys, one thing, you do that and then go from there. And then as kind of part of that conversation, towards the end of the stream, I think we started thinking about languages, because that's going to be a thing for me. Is languages, these kind of arcane languages. And I just said water because the water is the one I didn't come up with a name for, but I'm just going to call it. I don't know if water speech or I'll call it water tongue. There you go. So we have earth is stone speech, water is water tongue, air is wind speech, fire is flame tongue. Hey, Brian Smith's got out of a work meeting. Well, huzzah. Let me have a little watered down apple cider for the working man. In your honor. It's always great when work meetings get moved or canceled. So these are these elemental languages, and I ended up tying one of the elemental languages into Bind Lightning. And what I like about it is it's you start to almost what's the word? They say when you self-select or self-identify. Water tongue sounds completely inappropriate. Well, that's okay. Well, one, tying these things to languages, knowing that you can only know a few over the course of your career as a magician means that you're gonna have to start to pick and choose, and that will define the kind of spells you're casting. Because part of my idea here is, I think the evolution of this idea for me is maybe not necessarily to come up with a whole bunch of these Book of Gob type spells, coming up with a few, a selection, but then really is using that selection to think about, can we open this up and let a magician, NPC, or player create their own spells in a more easy way? Because again, just my personal experience, when I got to do that, I had a lot of fun with it. I think other folks might have a lot of fun with it, and it is something that's, it's not like there's only one. It's not like no systems do this. I mean, Barbarians of Lemuria is a system that I played and did it. I know there are other ones that do that, but I think it's a lot of fun. And I think when we analyze these spells, which we did before, kind of looking at the beginning of their stream, we're looking at Book of Gob and kind of seeing what it has. Is you can see the sort of framework that they have, which we printed off roughly over here, where you have your ingredients, your tools, equipment, whatever. There's some kind of procedure, process, or ritual. There's an action, which is what happens as a result of the ritual, and then there's the target and the effect. And sometimes these are related, sometimes they're offset. So with the Find Lightning spell, the effect is that lightning is bound to a rod, and then you can say some kind of command word, and then the lightning will release off of the rod. Procedure we talked about here, going off and writing down your sigil, which is another thing I liked from the book, though I might rename sigil, but that might be down the line. I like the term sigil, but I also kind of like the alliteration of magician's mark or magic mark, not Magic Mike, Magic Mark. So I might do that. I don't know, we'll see. But sigil is a cool word. And yeah, so we came up with the ingredients, the ritual, the action. Now I want to come up with something else, but I have a couple things. So I was thinking of, we did the elemental languages, but that's not going to be the only languages. There's going to be a bunch. And another thing I was thinking of is, should they nest? Should they nest? But I'm gonna avoid thinking about nesting too much, because I don't want to get too much. It's not that I don't want to get in the weeds, because obviously I do, but I think the thing is how given that a magician's going to be limited to how many languages they have, and those languages are going to go far ways to be one of the determining factors to which spells they can cast. The more granular you get means that if you're expecting that a wizard's going to take, let's give an example. So let's say I wanted to have Summon Wolf as a spell. It'd be a cool spell, right? You cast the spell, some number of wolves show up. And tying it into this whole thing of speech, I would definitely say, okay, you need to speak speech, the speech of the wolves. But do the wolves speak their own speech? Do they speak dog speech? Do they speak, canine speech? Do they speak animal speech? Hey, the Dave. And then I think the answer to me, I'd want to say yes, they do speak wolf speech. I would say they do speak wolf speech. They very much understand dog speech. They're a little bit they can communicate with you if you're in dog speech, and then if you just speak kind of animal speech, well, maybe they can get the gist. It's almost more of an empathic kind of thing. But what does that mean for the spells? I'm not sure. I probably want to save that stuff to the end. Not that it's kind of edge cases, it's an edge case, but just that I think since we're trying to stay mechanics free, almost like as Book of Gob did, kind of stuff them in a appendix somewhere. I don't want to get too much, but we want to have different. And again, I've just put this in kind of the parent languages. So maybe there's nature speech, elemental speech, And then within those, plant speech, animal speech, mineral speech, and then within those, maybe you get some other ones. It'd be cool, like some of them, I think, like being able to speak to silver or gold, something. I mean, maybe some really interesting spells you could do. And then I also am thinking, well, what if you could speak? What happens when you can combine some of these? That might be another neat thing to think about down the line. And then I want to have another category of languages. I don't know what word to use here. Oh, hey, the Dave. Welcome aboard. I don't know what word, because I kind of think I'm calling it divine speech right now. This would be, I don't know, spirit speech, talking to the dead. I don't know. I really do like the idea of these different languages, but I got to come up with eventually I got to come up with some kind of systemic approach. But I'm just kind of laying those out there. I was thinking of terms of what the next spell might be that we might try to cook up. And I don't know what it would be exactly. I was trying to think about it, and I was thinking what got me kind of on the speech thing was you have kind of a talk with dead, speak to dead sort of spell, which might just be you got to use spirit speech. Oh, I kind of like dead speech too. I don't know. Might have to mess around with words. So let's see. If I took this, and I believe I can just copy paste it, right? Oh, I can. So let's see if we can do. I'm curious. I felt like we actually moved through this one fairly. Let's try this one. Speak with dead. The effect is the magician may converse with a spirit for some amount of time. Some amount of time. Some vague. Put that aside for right now. Dave says, "Talk of the dead implies that the mind hangs out with the corpse well after it has turned to bones to him." Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's probably a lot of ways to do it or to think about it. I think you could very much describe it that way or very much color it that way. But I think what I was kind of thinking is you could also say that their remains or something else are a link from our world to the spirit realm. Like there's little tendrils of things you touch, and that you can get called back. Someone can basically a magician, let's say, that has this ability can find those little strings that bind us to items that were or places, items, or whatever that are that were strongly bound to us, and then sort of pull your spirit back. And I think that's kind of the flavor I'm going for here. So that Dave says, if reincarnation happens, can the person's mind get pulled back to the dead person? I would say no. I would say if you get reincarnated, like per the spell or per like the religious thing, because isn't per the spell if you get reincarnated per the spell, doesn't your corpse basically become the new thing? And it might be how you envision reincarnation. If it's reincarnation like we think about in our world belief systems, in which someone dies, they're buried, their body decomposes, and then their spirit is pulled into a whole new body somewhere else, I would say once you get into a new body, that severs the connection with the old body. But I mean, that's an interesting thing. If your setting is one in which that is something that happens, then you probably need to figure that out. Maybe this kind of spell doesn't make sense. If you're playing a spell but your world is, or your setting is in kind of, I think what Hindu tradition, I think Hinduism, there's the concept of reincarnation, or Buddhism, then this might not be a spell that is effective, or it's only effective for some unknown period of time until the mind or the spirit, let's say, is reincarnated. So you have a window. You would have a window, maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I don't know how fast it's supposed to happen, when it can happen, but you just need to figure that out for your setting. Yeah, Buddhism. Dave says Buddhism for sure. Yeah, so you need to figure it out in your setting, or even in the part of your setting. It might be, in a fantasy setting where there might be, well, I mean, like in our world, right? There's multiple religions at work, and if in your campaign world they're all correct, they're all true, then does the same, if and you had a Buddhist type religion or religion of reincarnation, does that happen just to people who believe in it? Does that happen to everybody? Whatever you'd have to figure that out, and then decide what that means for spells like this. And then, of course, there's that other concept of ghosts and those creatures that might be spirits that have lost their way. They're not only are they haven't left their bones or that place or whatever, right? That they're still connected to it, but they're still there, and maybe that makes it easy. One. So what do we need? So for this kind of speak with dead spell, we need at least one item, maybe one or more items strongly connected to the spirit. Let's see, strongly connected to the spirit. I don't know. I guess I'll say it as the spirit. Maybe this. See, I'm already going down rabbit holes, trying to avoid the rabbit holes, and I'm running right into them because now I want to say, okay, maybe this kind of spell. And here's another interesting thing, or not interesting, but one of the things I like, and one of the things I guess I say this a lot, is the more you can customize things for your setting, the more you can set the flavor of things to match what you're looking for. And what I mean is that I don't know I don't know what the D&D. I don't have a book around to check out that's handy how Speak with the Dead tends to work. If you need anything at all, if you just call up somebody's name and then they kind of show up and talk to you. I don't remember, and I don't know off the top of my head, and it's probably going to change from edition to edition. But in this one, we have the chance, because we're creating our own, we have the chance to determine how it works. So what do we need? And I'm saying in this world, this implicit setting at this point for this spell, you need something that's connected strongly to the spirit, and you need to be in a place that is strongly connected to the spirit. So I am saying for my version of the spell that what you're doing is you're trying to build up enough of these. If we think about it, how I was just saying about, and if you can imagine the spiritual layer of this world, things that you're strongly connected to, not just anything. You have a toothpick, throw it away, and someone can't save that toothpick for 50 years and then contact you after you're dead. No, no. But if you have something strongly connected to you, it's almost like it's identifying with you, then you can take that. Someone could take that's connected to you. If they can get more of them, all the better. I'm going to avoid in this kind of, part of me wants to go down that rabbit hole of saying, ooh, what kind of bonus do you get if you can get two things? If you can get one thing and the other, does that help? Like, I'm not, whatever, but I'm going to say is that you need to have at least one thing, and then also be in a place that is specifically connected to the person. And one of the things I liked in the Book of Gob Spells, I think this also offers, is it becomes a little bit of an adventure hook. You need something. You need to contact King Arthur. Well, what the first thing you might think is, well, we got to find his armor or his tomb. I mean, that's the thing, is a tomb, like a tomb where they're buried, might work because his bones and stuff are there, so that's strongly connected to him, and that's a place that's strongly connected to him. So you can go to someone's tomb and do this. You kind of, and they're in it. You're basically banged it all out. So all we got to do is we got to find King Arthur's tomb. Well, we know his body was taken to Avalon. We don't know where Avalon is. That's out. And I presumably Excalibur's with him, because that'll be the next one. It's like, ooh, can we get Excalibur? That would be definitely be an item strong and connected to Spirit, but we don't know where Excalibur is. But we might know something else. We might know where his armor is, or his shield, or his old banners. Maybe there's something of that we can go. And we don't know where his body's taken, but maybe we know where Camelot was, or some other castle, something else that's strongly associated, or we know where the stone that he drew the sword out of is. So we can go there, because we need to contact Arthur, because Arthur knows something. Dave says the Crown of Camelot. Yeah, something like that. You could find that. And then you have a little adventure, assuming that this is at least desirable or necessary for something else that the party or the going to do. All of a sudden, you go from, all right, well, I can do this thing. And maybe in the way these kind of spells are, that, look, if I can get this stuff there, if I can do this, then the spell's going to work. We're not going to do all this. I'm going to roll, and because I rolled a 2, everything's lost. Like, I can get this stuff doing. It's going to work, but I got to get there. I got to do it. Would a child or grandchild or child of the grandchild work? That's a good question. I feel like that would be up to GM. What would you think, Dave? On the one hand, you say, well, there's definitely like the blood, right? The blood of, it kind of makes sense if you want to go with that sort of, if that's a strong thing in your setting, like the blood of whomever. So the blood runs strong in him. So that's, it often we just think about that means that he inherited the characteristics of the person, but maybe that connection persists down a bloodline. Could totally work. Or if you think, they didn't know them, that's that kind of genetics doesn't work. I could see it either way, but they all make for good. They make for really interesting plot points. So if that makes sense for you, we could say, that would work for me if you can find such a person. One or more items. Let's see. Keeps up. Use keepsakes a little bit more. Or a descendant from their direct bloodline. That works for me. Connected. So you can, or maybe I should do this. I can't. I don't think I can do indented things, but we could. I think that. I think if I was going to rewrite this in like a word processor or layout editor, I would indent some stuff, do some stuff, but I think that's fine for now. Brian says, I draw the line that the deceased would have had to know them while alive. Yeah, see, that's absolutely, understandable. It's interesting things to think about. Like, what does that do if there's someone who is the long lost descendant of so and so, and they need, let's say for an NPC, you might want to do this, right? Okay, I got to find the long lost great grandson of Arthur so that I can find out where something is. Only he knows. He knows something, and I got to find it out. So I'm going to go hunt down the great grandson, and then I'm gonna do that, right? And maybe then it's the party's like, we got to find him first and save him. I think Game of Thrones had that little thing where it was kind of a little subplot in the show anyway, where there was the kid who was the out of wedlock child of the dead king, right? And there was the I don't remember what happened exactly, but there was definitely this idea that the Lannisters, if they find out that this person's around and who that is, that they would die, so they got to kind of protect them. And that obviously different reasons, but that same kind of thing, this becomes important. Maybe you want to seek this person out. Maybe this becomes a commodity almost. Dave says they kind of like the idea that you're hunting down someone deep in the bloodline, but I might specify they have to be on the female side because of mitochondrial DNA. Sure. I don't even want to go down that. I feel like that kind of genetics, that sort of scientific specificity is great if it works for you. But for me, I don't really love that stuff just because it makes me think of midichlorians in Star Wars, when the prequels, when they just kind of ruined the Force for me by trying to find some kind of pseudoscientific reason about the Force being strong. It's like, no, they're these little critters, and it's like, ooh. So yeah, if you want to make it female through the female line via mitochondrial DNA, or you just want to put it down the female line just because, and it all works. Whatever makes sense for you. But that's the nice thing about tweaking and really writing your own spells is you get to specify. If you want it to be something totally different, you can do that. I think too often we just go down to the book spells and just run with them, and then you lose that part because you end up inheriting this you end up inheriting the implied setting, or at least bits thereof, that might not fit your setting. Well, Smith says an evil sorcerer would for sure love to test the rules to see if a grandkid could allow some kind of influence over a dead king. Yes, and during that conversation, if you gotta harm this descendant to get the dead guy to give up, spill his beans or her beans, then maybe you gotta do that. Says the evil necromancer. Absolutely. So let's see what kind of ritual would be. So the magician. Let's see. The magician. Let's see. Gathers the items in the place connected with the spirit. Then calls out to the spirit 3 times, because I like the rule 3. In what are we calling it right now? Spirit speech? I kind of like dead speech. Death speech, dead speech. I don't like dead speech. Maybe I should uppercase it. Spirits. No, that's the wrong. I was in the wrong space. Make this new. Here we go. 3 times in dead speech. Speech of the damned. Well, they don't have to be damned. Dave, I am not suggesting that they have to be damned to get there. I mean, this is where you can get into the weeds. Like, ooh, where is this dead person? Are they in some kind of paradisal sort of plane? Would that make it harder to contact? But if they're in kind of a hellish sort of, or if they are damned, does that make it more difficult? Like, I'm not even gonna. I feel like that's the way I kind of get sucked into things that I think turn me into down hallways I don't need to go down. Certainly, if we're talking about some kind of hellish planar speech, there might be a speech of the damned. It is an awesome name, and I might use it for if there was an infernal. Infernal might be a speech of the damned. All right, so let's see. So we've got the ritual, right? The ritual is you do that stuff. The action. The spirit arrives. Within 10 minutes of the call. Is that the effect? I think that's about it. Target is the spirit. Right. So far, these rules match up to summoning Beetlejuice. Yeah, love that movie. B, totally. Beetlejuice. I think that too. It kind of matches up with that. Actually, Brian Smith, in terms of Beetlejuice, it actually matches up more closely to when the family or the dad and Otho, I guess, was the guy who actually was doing it, takes their model of the town and uses that to summon them into the makes them kind of visible and I don't know into flesh. That's kind of what he's doing. He's in the house and he's got this. Cause remember, they've redecorated the whole house, so the house doesn't have a lot of theirs. But in that attic, because the attic wasn't disturbed really, the model's there, and so they get in there and they take the model down, and that kind of helps helps him get the spell cast. When did they get the business card? Yeah, the couple did have his business card, but he got that to them somehow. I don't remember that's before or after he started living in the model. And the effect is spirit will speak to the magician, but is not compelled by this charm. Maybe I'll just leave it. I'll just say I'll speak to the magician. I was going to start writing into some caveats about it's not, you're not compelling them to speak the truth or tell you things, but they're there. They're there and they will talk with you for some period of time. Well, that wasn't such a chore now, was it? And I think, because I think as I would think that this kind of speak with dead spell is in some ways way less useful than, have a lot less utility than your regular speak with dead spell because it is so highly specific. But that's why I think it's fairly key in these sort of systems to either you're being very generous with your spell slots or other things, or you have to open things up in other ways. Either you have a bunch of spells that they can do so that they'll have enough in there. I'm not saying that you have to have a spell for every occasion that they know so they can always do something, but I do think that if you're going to, as a player, you do want to be able to use these things, and they're situational, which is why I remember I kept saying about the Book of Golf Spells, wow, this is great. It's very situational. It's great. So you want to make sure, I think, that they have stuff that at least can fit in certain situations. Okay, what might be another one to try? Anyone have a spell they want to, or at least a concept for a spell? I'm happy to take a request because I should, if I planned better, I could come up with a list, but I don't. I just thought of Speak with Dead, so I could. I just came up with it, just kind of off the top of my head. So I don't have something else. I'll make another copy of Bind Lightning, though. What's another kind of thing? What's another sort of thing? Oh, I missed that. Brian said Otho knew his gob. Yes, he did. And Dave said he hasn't seen Beetlejuice in years. It's probably been a couple of years since I've seen it, I think. But that said, it's Halloween, so I think I'll probably have a chance to see it imminently. What is another kind of spell? What would be another one I was thinking of? Brian Smith says, let's gobify one of the utility spells. Go for it. Magic Rope. What would Magic Rope do? Shelter? What would be a shelter one, Brian? Are you talking like what is that? The 5th edition one? Leomund's Tiny Hut or something? Let me see if do we have an explanation? Can we get D&D spells? Leomund's Tiny Hut. This, I don't know what version this is, but we're in. What is this? It doesn't say. A 10-foot radius immobile dome of force springs into existence around and above you and remains stationary for the duration. The spell ends if you leave its area. The Dave says that he loathes. I loathe that hut. 9 creatures of medium size or smaller can fit inside its dome with you. The spell fails if its area includes a larger creature or more than 9 creatures. That's fine. All right, creatures and objects within the dome. When you cast the spell, can move through it freely. All other creatures and objects are barred from passing through it. Spells and other magical effects can extend through the dome or be cast through it. The atmosphere inside the space is comfortable and dry regardless of the weather outside. Until the spell ends, you can command the interior to become dimly lit or dark. The dome is opaque from the outside of any color you choose, but is transparent from the inside. Dave says maybe better if you can't see out of it and no one may enter or exit until it disperses. Yeah, so this is an interesting one, right? So what is this thing really doing? What is the point of the spell? It's to give you a safe place to rest. Lasts for 8 hours, which is so you get to rest. It's let's see, what is it? So spells and other magical effects. Spells. Let's hold on a minute. Spell fail. Okay, so everyone's inside. Other creatures can't pass through it. Spells and other magical effects can't extend through it. But I guess you could cast spells on the inside. Spell ends and you command the interior to become. You can command the interior until the spell ends. You can command the interior to be dimly lit or dark. I'm not sure why, but I guess you could turn off the lights. It's opaque from the outside. I don't know why. Okay, so I guess you don't have to have a light in there. Dave says the point of the spell is to get rid of nighttime encounters completely. Well, yes, I'm trying to think about it fictionally. Yes, mechanically, that's what you're doing. But I think the one thing that I always read on this online when people complain about the spell, and someone else will come in and say, "Well, that doesn't stop people from doing stuff to the hut." Like I think I've seen things like, "Well, what if they come and just pile a bunch of junk on the hut?" Uh, like they basically, let's say you're in a forest and you cast the spell, and then some giants or whatever come around, they just start piling up all the just uh, pushing over trees and just piling them up on the hut, so that when the hut collapses, you're trapped. You can't get out. You're trapped, and then the hut collapses and things like smash. Um, I know people use it inside too. So yeah, I'm not sure. So, but I think fictionally, and look from a fictional perspective, it totally makes sense. If you as the wizard have a way, because wizards have to travel, they can't. There are distances that you're just not going to be able to travel through without having it to stop, and you might need to be going through dangerous areas. So the spell itself, the reason for it, just in a fictional sense, it makes sense. It makes sense fictionally. It makes sense in the meta. Um, oh, my chair's dropping. Hold on a second. Oh, have the land under the hut collapse into a cave. That's interesting. The Dave's Dave's had a giant do that to the players. I'm not sure what the non. I mean, it's definitely. I'm definitely willing. I am willing. I'm open to suggestions. It's a good idea. Would it be one that they would do? Would you have? So, because I feel like the kind of stuff. So I think if we were look back to what we did when we looked at the Book of Gob, there was that spell about hiding inside the painting, which I thought was a great one for getting a rest. It had a real risk attached to it, but it was something like that. So it did something. It had a similar function. I mean, that wasn't its function. It had a similar potential utility, which is hide from some of our hours. But there was a pretty severe cost if things went awry. And I think in that one, the way the spells, you couldn't do it for 8 hours. So what could we do? What could we do here? I'm not sure. So it's a like I think it would definitely. So I think what my feelings are, that would not be this giant spherical energy shield wall. It wouldn't be that. I don't want it to be that. I'm not sure what it would be. Yes, as Brian says, the hut spell as is would definitely need some danger added to call it up. Yes, there would have to be something. So what else might it be? Like I could see it doing a few different things. So we have this idea. We want to be safe to rest. It's dangerous. We want to be safe. What What could it be? So one thing I was thinking of, maybe some worm swallows you safely. I mean, that would be one. Yeah, you get a worm swallows you up. I was actually thinking my actual idea is not far off from yours. It was kind of it was uh it was like you transform onto little bugs or something within this area. Something that's very nondescript. But I was thinking like I could, that almost seems like it's too useful. Too useful. I mean, I don't mind. I feel like it's something that I think like I like the one hiding in the picture. It has more than one use. It doesn't have to be just for one thing. But this is the I don't know. What would it be? What would it be? Getting swallowed by worms. This I don't want to step on spells we did see because I was thinking, oh, you could like shoot into a shadow. That might be one. You you become your shadow. Um, He says, "What if you collapse in your own dream while you sleep? Your body's no longer there, but you may have nightmares." Nothing. Hey, no, nothing says turn to stone for 8 hours. So, what's the danger part of being turned to stone? Here's my idea. Not that any of your ideas are bad. Here's my idea. I'm just gonna write it in a text box. I'll move it over there, but I don't want to get it in the format. And I don't know what I would call it. And we could discuss. So I was liking the idea of the well, the Dave says if an ogre breaks your arms off, you wake without arms. Well, that's true. That's true. But I feel like the problem with something like that is that the problem with something like that is that it turns into a little bit of how much of a jerk am I going to be as a GM if I roll up a random ogre or encounter, considering that let's say in the case that the parties turned themselves to stone for 8 hours. Presumably, there's no smell, there's no sight, there's no nothing. So a wandering, usually let's say with a nighttime camping wandering encounter situation, we generally justify that you're making noise or they're making noise, or well, if they found you, it's you're making noise, you've got light out, you've got thing right, there's activity and stuff going on around the camp and it's spotted and oh, this is happening. Now, presumably you're all turned to stone. No, you don't need to do a campfire. Don't need to really unpack anything. You don't smell. You're stone. So then you have the one thing, well, like, okay, well, maybe I could roll. I suppose I could just do the whole old, I'm just going to roll to see how close they are. And if they're within 10 or 20 feet, then they see the statues. If they don't, they don't. Okay. But then if they'll say they see the statues, remember, we're in fantasy medieval game territory. Some statues sitting in the woods, I suppose one might jump to, they must have cast this spell. But it could just as easily be there must have been a basilisk or a cockatrice or a Medusa running around. I better get the heck out of Dodge, right? It's not, unless I'm being a jerk, I don't know how far down the line of things that then the ogre or somebody else, especially if they're smart. If it's an animal, I just think they'd ignore it. If it's something smart, is going to go, you know what, just for good measure, I'm going to knock all their arms and legs off. I just don't know. I don't know. Um, Dave says, what if you make a tent that is bigger on the inside, but if the tent is ripped open, something bad happens? Oh, like a little TARDIS, kind of a TARDIS tent. Elizabeth Schreider asks where I'm from. I'm from the great city and state of New York. Brian Smith says, I like the risk of being safe unless some chance happens occurs, like something pops your bubble. Yeah. So the one I was thinking of is so here. Let me just put the description. You guys can tell me whether I'm in the how this is working out. So I like the idea that the for the duration of the spell, the magician and any other living beings. I don't know. And any, I don't know, I'll just put allies right now. Allies transform into shadows cast by a candle or other source, natural source of flame. Elizabeth asks, am I new on streaming? I'm not new. I'm just not very good at it, Elizabeth. I've actually been doing this for a while, but you might not be able to tell because of my amateurish efforts. But no, I wish I was new because that would make my record a lot less pathetic. The Dave says, calling back to Beetlejuice again. What if you need to use chalk to draw the door? The door remains until you leave. That, well, yeah, I feel like that would be a different for. So you're talking about like for a trapped space or your tent idea. The chalk thing is cool for some kind of door. Did they need to know where they were going? I'd have to watch that. Good excuse to watch Beetlejuice again. I don't remember. I know they had to write the door. They had to draw the door with the knob, and I think they had to knock on the door. Did they have to say where they were going, or did they just know? Good idea. So the idea here is you become. So here, let me see if I can visualize this, or I can describe any way you can visualize. You cast this spell. You've got a torch, a candle, campfire. As long as that burns, while this thing is burning, you cast a spell with this thing, and you become shadows as if cast like you're standing there, but only your shadows are there if cast by the flame. And as long as the flame lasts, you'll be there. So you could try to get a long burning candle, but here's the thing. People coming in will see you. They'll see you cast on the floor or whatever the space happens to be. On the wall, potentially, they will see you. But they can't interact with you because you're just shadows. Now, the danger part is, well, it's kind of manifold. So number one, it's got to be natural flame. I don't want to get into something of like, oh, I cast Everflame, and then we could do this with impunity. It's got to be natural flame. Magical flame, the doesn't work. Couple of danger points here. One, someone puts out the fire. It's got to go out. Like if the fire is blown out, or I guess I would say this, you have to come out before the fire goes out itself. You can exit any time. If the fire goes out and you're still there, then you are caught in the land of shadows, whatever that means. Whatever that means. If somebody picks up the fire and moves it, so you got this candle, you set some big, massive candle down in the dungeon room, wherever you want to rest, and you hit it, and then you guys go, all right, and you cast a spell, and you guys all become shadows cast by the candle. And somebody comes up, picks up the candle, and walks away with it. You're following the candle. You are bound to the candle and that light. So you were going to follow it. So someone comes by and opens up the door to the room where you guys are all hiding, and then just sees this lit candle. They say, oh, good, I needed a candle. I'm going to come and take it and put it somewhere else. Then you're going where that candle goes. The day says a creature of shadow might be able to interact with you. Yeah, possibly you could have that too. I mean, that's kind of, you probably want to figure out, well, how often is that going to happen? I think the danger is more that something unexpected. For example, you set a big bonfire, and then somebody comes and puts it out, or a gust of wind comes, or it starts raining, or maybe you have a regular campfire and you decide to ask your hirelings, to keep watch over it because you can't talk to them while you're in the shadow. Do they fall asleep? Do they whatever? Brian Smith says, can you see the lit world in the shadow? I would probably say no. I'm not sure what that would look like. And if this was something like kind of like the Dave sort of speaking to, if this was something you wanted to use, I would definitely encourage if you have, because I know one time whether we looked at the spell, or no, it was an item for Sword Timber, right? That you could bounce through shadows. The concept of having a shadow realm or shadow verse or shadow plane and then having rules. I totally would, if you had that kind of thing set up, like, oh yeah, there's this plane of shadows and all this and that, and it has shadow creatures, and you can move through shadow. Then I would totally say that, yeah, you're now you see in the shadow realm and whatever, and not in the lit realm. But I would say that you're kind of partly blind, or maybe mostly blind. Maybe you have some inkling. I'm not sure. Have to play around with that a bit. I mean, I like what happened with the picture that you're. I like the idea of being stuck in the shadow realm. That you are stuck in the realm of shadows, whatever it is. And then maybe we could have some. Maybe I should put a note here. Because why not change it to my yellow for note color? Maybe this weird light interaction attacks critters from the shadow realm. The DM swaps out the random encounter with a random shadow encounter. Yeah, I think you want to be careful with that, only because remember the reason why someone's going to cast this, and this is something that's open ended, right? But I think the idea was that they would be able to rest. So if you're just swapping one set of encounters for another set of encounters, it kind of becomes it doesn't become as appealing, right? But I think there's enough danger because you have to have either. What I like about it is that you I don't want to say put your faith. You kind of, well, I guess in a way you do. You kind of have to. You're sort of putting your faith in your timing, in potentially other people, in nature, that this candle or light or whatever you're doing isn't going to go out or be snuffed out. I think that's the real danger, is that you are extraordinarily vulnerable. You're safe in a very real way, and that a lot of people would just pass by whatever it is. I mean, think about it this way. It would be a cool way. I mean, it would be weird maybe if you could get away with it, but imagine you're in an inn and you're afraid that the bad folks are going to come and get you in the inn. You've been staying at this inn, and but you're afraid that your cover has kind of been blown, and that's you're thinking in the night, Nazgul style, some bad guys are going to come stab you in your bed. Well, what if you went to the fireplace in the inn and cast this spell? Like you got Butterbur the innkeeper to you have the room to yourself or whatever. You get able to get a moment in the common room, gather everyone around the fireplace and cast a spell on it, and you're putting your faith in Butterbur and the other people that they're going to keep the fire lit all night. But there's a chance, something bad could happen. Let's see. Dave says you could use it to hide a large group while getting moved into a castle. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways you could use this. Yeah, absolutely, right? You could cast it, and you could have it for a short period of time, cast it on a torch, and have somebody else guide you in, right? Absolutely. Ryan says it's like the Matrix, so having somebody watch the ship while you get jacked in. Yeah, kind of. Well, I said Brian's asked, do I want it to be castable on any light source? I feel like it would be anything that's natural flame. So not anything unnatural, not like, this, like I said, and nothing like an ever burning candle. No, it's got to be kind of natural flame. The source of light can't be magical, I would imagine. I think that's about it. I mean, you can even make the argument that why not something magical, I guess. If you have all this, I mean, that's kind of like if you've got the gear, let them use it. So you might even just say it's just got to send out, it's got to be light that creates shadow, maybe. So maybe if you were trying to do it in an area where, like if it was noon and you lit a candle out in the middle of a field and there's no cloud cover, there's no shadows, then you couldn't cast it, right? You got to have light. You got to have light in the presence of shadows. Might be where I would want to go with that, maybe. Smith says they like the built-in timer and trouble fuel and the unreliable nature. I do too. I'm simply thinking of, at some point, a high-level wizard might get something ever burning. And maybe at that point you go, well, you're a high-level wizard, so that's fine, right? You're going to start off at low levels. You're not going to have access to it. So I could see the argument of like, well, it doesn't really matter. If they get to be 9th level and they have some magic items and they're able to find this way of utilizing both for a really cool effect, then why not? Because it's still trouble. It's still, you could think of kind of bad things that happen. What if they take your ever burning little gem that you've got and put it in a bag and toss you in the river? What if they bury you 50 feet underground? What if they cast Disintegrate on the gem? There's a lot of ways that things could still go bad. What if they cast a spell magic on the gem? Yeah, I don't know, Brian. So what would you? The Dave says they still are going where the other entity wants to steal them to. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. If somebody picks up, oh look, it's the little gem. I'm going to take this home. There's still a lot of devilry that could happen to you, even if you had some kind of magic object. So maybe I would even say that you just have to have light and shadow. You know, Elizabeth, I don't have a particular Discord, so nothing like that there. And I'm not really in the market for stuff, but I appreciate the offer. Yeah, so there's a lot you can do there. Now, as far as a name, what is in a name? A name. I don't know. Something with shadow would work, right? Like I don't know. Shadowcast sounds goofy, but I'll put that there. If you're like it's put into a pocket, you're locked in, you can't get out, there isn't room for you. Yeah, I mean, I would totally do that. I would totally, or there's just no. Well, I guess if you put, there'd probably still be folds. You can get, yeah, I would say if there's not room for you to get out, then you can't get out. So the spell, you are transformed into the shadow that you cast from a light source. I definitely think there could be some really kind of creepy stuff that could happen if you shadow veil up the X-Men. Well, it's very flavorful. I don't know. It's very, very Gaubian of you. Actually, the Gaub term would probably come up with what, like some kind of Latin word for shadow. If we really wanted to gob it up, let's see. No, not that. No. I was looking up a something for DaVinci Resolve. No, I just wanted to go to Bing.com. Nothing special. Okay. What is the etymology of shadow? I actually wanted the chat kind, and now you're not. Let's see. Middle English shadway from English skidue, skiadu, shiadue. Tenebral veil. Yeah. Anglo-Saxon baby name. It's from a baby name. Skadu. Sounds like ska from babynamescube.com or sheknows.com. Let's go to just etymology online, shall we? Middle English shadwe. Shadue. From shade, the effect. Okay, that's fine. Dark image. Yep. Shadow is to shade as meadow is to mead. Oh, that's interesting. Similar formation to, okay, a bunch of other things. Then there's shadow, the verb. Shadowin, Shadwen, Kentish Sedwi. Chiaroscuro is a light dark art term. That's pretty, yeah, that would be a good one. That'd be Italian, right? What is the etymology of chiaroscuro? We get something good? Okay, it's chiaro and oscuro. Okay. What did it go? Guess so. There we go. So what's light? So when we go back to Old English, what's light? Old English, let leot. Proto-Germanic, luktam. Liacht, lucht, licht, leot. So if we go with, say, leot, what would be the part two? Let's see. What would be dark? Dirk, Dior, gloomy. Oh, gloomy might be good. Sad. Let's see. Derkaz. Wait, source also of Old High German. How do you get from Derkaz to Tarchangen? That's cool because that's exactly what we want. Hide, conceal. All right, so we've got well, there you go. Leotharchanjan. Uh Hide in the light. I'll have to do something with that, but that'll work for right now. That's a great call out though on the chiaroscuro. It is very easy. Maybe that's what you have to say. You have to say that without stepping over it to make the spell to get the spell cast. And then let's see. So, what language would we use? Well, fire. Maybe that's flame tongue. Maybe this is the flame tongue. Colorado Nictu. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Maybe change that J. So it's Leotharcharge. Leotharchaniansi. uh got that. Maybe this has got to just go to something like that, or maybe like that. Leorch, Leoch. I don't know if that's supposed to be a hard ch. Have to work with that. Flame tongue is not just a sword, Dave. It is a sword plus so much more. I have to Tarchangen. I like the word. Maybe just keep it as two. Whoops. The way of life? Maybe. Maybe. Leoth Tarchangen. That sounds like somebody's name. I misspelled spell and didn't even know it. All right. I think we did some good work here. Still need an ingredient. Well, we got the ingredients. Let's see if I can do this fast. I mean, literally is hide in shadows, which is good because it literally is what it is. Need a light source, and cast shadows. All right, the magician calls out to magician speaks the words of light and shadow while they stand casting shadows within the light of their light source. Action happens. The magician is transformed into their cast shadow for the duration of the spell. Oops. Magician and their allies, and then yep. While spell and the light source persists, magician is I don't know, we can get into it. I'll have to write it up, but basically kind of what we talked about, right? The magician and their allies are shadows. They can't be gotten to. But as we mentioned, I have to write it up. They can be moved. Mischief can be done upon them. It just has to be of a different sort. And of course, something like the spell magic would probably work. It'd be interesting. You could think about how that works. Does the spell magic kill the spell ending the duration early, and so they pop back up? Does the spell magic send them into the land of shadows, into the Shadowlands? What exactly happens? I think we talked about that someone could pick up the light source and move it. Someone could snuff out the light source, so on and so forth. So there's still, I think it's useful. I think we could think about how do you set that duration. It's the duration of the spell up until the fire goes out. But if you don't end the spell manually before the fire goes out, bad things happen, so on and so forth. So I think this was good. I think we had a slow start, and then I don't know what to do. I really like this term, Leoth Tarchanjan or Tarchanin. Not sure what to do with that, but it's cool because it's basically exactly what it is. They have to work that in somehow. But we got what is that? We got a third spell down. I feel like we're getting in a little bit of a groove. I think that some spells are not going to work as well as others in the system just because they're too vague. They're kind of too like Leomund's tiny hut as it is. It's not really to the flavor of my setting, so I don't want to have big translucent domes littering the landscape. So it's just not my thing. But I think this is much more kind of cool and a little bit creepy almost. If you were to walk by and spend a moment looking at a shadow and you see things moving, but there's no, you see the shadows of things moving, but not the things themselves. Super creepy. And we could probably figure out in the Shadowlands if we want to flesh that out. What can you see being in the shadows? What can you interact with being in the shadows? How aware are you of what's happening? Maybe it's kind of like you're dimly lit in the real world, kind of thing, but you can't communicate outwards. So maybe if you saw your hireling falling asleep when you want them to man the fire that's casting your shadows, and you could see it, it'd be dimly lit, but it wouldn't be. You couldn't yell at them. You'd have to end the spell basically to yell at them, assuming somebody's on guard. But yeah, it seems like there'd be some really neat uses of that spell, which is, I think it's cool. I like that. All right, folks. Sorry I didn't get this on the schedule. I will try to get better, but it was literally if I don't hit the button now and go live now, I'm not going to go live. My game night's tonight, so I'm looking forward to that. I think we're going to be a little bit short-handed player-wise, but I think we're going to play. So that will be fun. And then I got a couple things that might do tomorrow. I don't know. We shall see. But other than that, folks, enjoy the rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. As usual, game on, everybody. And I will talk to you later. Bye now.